Good evening. My name is Thurman Greco, and the name of this program is Let's Live with Thurman Greco, and it's coming to you from scenic downtown Woodstock, New York, on Educational Channel 23. And it is also coming to you from YouTube, Let's Live with Thurman Greco. And we have a very interesting guest this evening. His name is Eric Greenburg, and he is returning to Woodstock for a visit. And would you care to share for a couple of moments what brought you here now?
Well, I grew up in Woodstock from '63 and basically stayed through '89. What brought me here is that I always had lots of stories to tell about my times here. And over the years, folks have said to me, you should write some of that stuff down. And so over the last 15 years, I've actually been compiling my stories and putting them down in a book. And so my book, Waves Upon the Sand, Growing Up Woodstock and Beyond, is now out in publication, available on Amazon for sale. And we'll be over at the library fair signing books and making them available to the public for their reading consumption, and as well as Maurer's Market over at the flea market on Sunday. So look forward to seeing everybody there.
So if you're making it to the library fair, mm-hmm. and you're making it to Maurer's Market, you're kind of doing the circuit.
Well, yeah, per se. Wasn't able to do it. I was scheduled to do the market last Sunday, but we were afraid we were going to get rained out, and I didn't want to set everything up only to get all my books showered on. So we postponed it for this Sunday.
I think that was probably a pretty good idea. He didn't open the market last week.
He didn't? Well,
no,
there you go.
And because I work Saturdays and Sundays mm-hmm. there, and I was not there last weekend. Which, it's okay. It's outside. We do what we do. We press on. So when you have a memoir, mm-hmm. what is it about your memoir that you think made people seek out your stories?
Well, they're personal bull, and I mean that in the sense that people can relate, I think, to stories that they've had in their lives, and whether you grew up in this area or anywhere else in the world, it's a lot of it's very Americana in terms of being a little boy growing up. I remember being in Ruby, New York, back in 1957, looking at Overlook Mountain for the first time when I had moved there, and it was fall. And Overlook Mountain was in all of its glory. And it took me a while to get up the nerve, but I always wanted to dig a tunnel from my backyard to Overlook Mountain. Come middle of winter, I got up the gumption to get out of the snow shovel and proceed. So I jumped on the thing, went through about 8 inches of snow, hit the frozen ground, the shovel bent, and I ended up with my face caked with snow. And I realized that I probably was going to need some help, and that was going to require money. And of course, I didn't have the wherewithal to do it at that time, so I had to put my ideas on hold. But lo and behold, back in 1963, about 6 years later, we moved to Woodstock, New York. I moved with my dad, and our living room was the Cafe Espresso. And folk musicians used to come up from the village and to play. We get Hamza Aldine and Tom Paxton, and a lot of folks that were on the scene there would come up. And one day, it was rumored that some guy that was making kind of a name for himself was going to come on up, and everyone was prepared to hear his music and welcome him to town. And he did, and he started banging out some music on the piano, and he had the screechiest voice, but his words were great. We really liked his words, and I guess it came to show that I guess no matter how your voice sounds, you can really actually make it, provided you're saying the right thing and talking about the right subject matter, and he was, and that was a good thing. And he would inevitably make his way over to our table. And him and my dad would debate for hours on hours about just about anything in the world you can imagine. As a 9-year-old, I would bring up subjects such as, why is the sky blue? And my dad's friend would say, it's black. Well, at night. And my dad said, yeah, but it's blue. And they would debate for hours on that. And every once in a while, I would try to interject. And they'd look at me and go, shut up, kid. I mean, well, wait a second, didn't I bring up the subject? Didn't I have a right to say anything? Anyway, one night, they take out a copy of Look magazine. And I'm looking at Look magazine, and they're opening up the thing, and right there is a double-page spread of photograph of somebody. And my dad looks at me, he says, you see this guy anywhere in the room? And I look around, I look at my dad's friend, and my dad, of course, and I look around the room, and of course nobody that famous would ever be in Life magazine or Look magazine sitting at my table. I mean, they'd have to be rich, they'd have to be really famous. And who in our living room at the Cafe Espresso would fill that bill? And all of a sudden I see this guy reaching into his pocket and throwing a $5 bill into my dad's open hands. I said, what was that about? Well, you see this picture? That's him. I said, who? And he says, my name's Bob Dylan. I said, Bob Dylan? Okay, so I guess you really can make money even though you have a screechy voice and what have you. That's pretty good. So I'm starting to think, maybe this guy's gonna help me build my tunnel, dig my tunnel. Because that's what I really wanted to do. I wanted to dig that tunnel. I never let go of that idea. So about 2 weeks later, I get up the nerve to walk up to him. I go, Bobby, Mr. Dylan, excuse me, but can I have a word with you? I knew him well enough. Okay, but it needs to be someplace private. So we go over to the middle of the room with the espresso. He says, is this good enough? I said, no. We go in the corner of the room. And he said, listen, I'd like to be your partner. He says, well, as my partner, what would you do for me? Now, I'm 9 years old, and I don't have much of a sales ability at that time, although I did grow up to be one, a salesperson, that is. And but at that time, I really needed some honing on my sales ability. I said, well, I have an idea to help you spend your money. And he turned, I can't tell you how many colors he turned all at the same time. It must have been blue, then green, what have you. He looked at me, really puzzled, had a spooky look on his face, and whizzed past me and out the door of the Cafe Espresso, not to be seen for a couple of weeks. I guess his prediction came true about being recognized, because that's what the whole bet was with my dad. Now I won't be able to walk down the street without people hitting on me. And my dad says, no, they won't even recognize you. And that was what the bet was, right? And here I am hitting on him, and so he's out of there. So a couple weeks later, and by the way, while this was all going on, everyone's looking at me going, what do you say to Bobby, kid? What do you say to Dylan? I said, I didn't say nothing. No, I don't know what you're talking about. Anyway, I got my school bucks in my hands one day, and this late 50s model Hudson pulls up. Suicide doors, and one door flings open, and it's Bobby. He says, get in, kid. Always called me kid. Hopped in, I know him. And he takes me to this ride all around the Catskills, all around the mountains. And I said, now I finally get to tell him. And I couldn't get a word in edgewise. All he's saying to me is, do good in school. Don't ask anyone else for anything that you haven't earned yourself. Do for yourself. Join the system. Follow the rules. You know, that's just the way to fly. And for 45 minutes, an hour, he's driving me around, finally kicking me out over at the green again. And I'm going, maybe I deserved it, I don't know. But I mean, isn't this the guy that wrote Maggie's Farm? So at any rate, that was how I met Bob Dylan. And the funny thing is that for years after that, whether it was a member of the band or anyone else that knew the guy, they would pull their cars over anytime they saw me, roll down their window, come here, kid. And I'd walk over, how you doing in school, kid? I'm doing okay, you know. So it's stories like that. People like to hear those kind of stories, and I wrote them down. And they're all here in my book.
Did you ever get your tunnel built?
Never got this tunnel built. And by the time I got older, I kind of lost interest in doing that particular project. There were other things that became more important.
Really? Such as?
Such as 1967 rolls along. And my mom gets the idea that I ought to spend a couple weeks with my grandmother, my Nana, down in Florida. And that plane didn't leave until Monday. On Monday, it was the end of school in June. And my dad and his girlfriend at the time decided to spend the whole weekend in the city, hanging out and doing stuff before they would take me to the airplane. So that was fine, 1967, summer of love, right? I was still 13 years old. And we checked into the Hotel Albert. And first we wanted to do the Chelsea, but they were all booked up. But we went into the Albert, and then we got down on the street into the village, walking around. I'm seeing people with long hair and sandals, and I thought that was just a Woodstock thing, but everyone seemed to be doing it. And I couldn't wait to get back home. I'm going, oh man, I'm wasting my whole summer going down to Miami, But I did have fun down there. And we're walking along, and Dad says, well, I got to stop in and say hello to somebody to take care of some business, and come on along. And he's a radio announcer, and so we stop in to this place called Pacifica Radio. It was WBAI in New York City. And we walk up, it's a walk up, and we walk into the studio, and it's on air and the red light's on, and they're playing Alice's Restaurant. And we look through the double pane window, and there's Bob Fass, and he's just put the needle onto the record, and he waves us in, because the record goes about 20 minutes, Alice's Restaurant. And so he waves us in, and they start talking about I don't know what, but they're going for it, back and forth. And the record's done, and Bob gets back on the mic. He says, and for the 17th time, if I get another request for this record, I'm going to play it again. And the phone rings, and he plays it again. Okay, and they go on, and my dad and he make a date for the next day to go see. We're going to go see a movie together. That's great. Okay, and we get back out on the street, spend the night in the hotel, and by the time we get back there, he's playing it for the 57th time. A haggard-looking Bob Fass is playing this Alice's Restaurant for the 52nd time. And as a little footnote, I remember one time hitchhiking down from Bearsville, and Arlo Guthrie comes and picks me up. And he's driving either Sally's Bentley or Albert's Rolls, I don't know. But here I am riding along with Albert's friend, Arlo Guthrie. And I tell him the story of Alice's Restaurant, at least my version, and he got a real kick out of that. At any rate, I end up going down to Miami, and like I said, I couldn't wait to get back. And when I did get back, I started hanging out on the village green again with all my friends, and it was on Pan Copeland's porch. If anyone knows or remembers Pan Copeland, she ran the Pan's Delicatessen over on the corner where the corner cupboard was for years, and now it's morphed into something else. And where Gene Termo is, was the porch that we hung out on. And the Daily News, even in 1967, said the times are changing, and it had a picture of us all standing on the porch, which is somewhere. Jan Peterson has a copy of that. She's one of the people that was hanging out on the porch, and I was hanging out there with Arthur Smith and Danny Wells and a few other of the town kids. And a pickup truck pulls up, and this guy in buckskin jacket hops out with a hat and boots and everything. Who here wants a job for this summer? And I'm going, that's just what I'm signing up for. That sounds great. And Arthur comes with me, Danny comes with me, George Quinn hops in, and we hop in the back of this pickup truck, and off we go to Pan Copeland's Chicken Ranch, okay, which is down Glasgow Turnpike, just the other side of the Four Corners. Okay, we hop out, and there's Jocko Moffett, and he's going to tell us what's going on, what we're going to be doing. He says, we're going to have a music festival. A music festival? What's a music festival? I've never heard of a music festival before. And he started to describe what was going to happen. For 3 days, we were going to have a camp out, and there were going to people, rock and roll was going to be played, and folk music was going to be played, and blues was going to be played, and people were going to camp out and enjoy the show for 3 whole days. I said, well, that sounds like a blast. I'm in. I'll sign in for that. And so it turns out that we're not going to get paid until the show makes money. Well, I didn't mind. It was a summer job. As far as I'm concerned, I had a summer job. And I was getting to hang out with all those people, letting my hair grow, and I was having a good time. And Jocko was treating for pizza once in a while, and this, that, and the other thing. And once in a while, he'd lay a couple bucks on you, you know, to have some spending money. And so the summer progressed, and one by one, George left, and then Danny quit, and Arthur quit, and I was the only one left. And come Labor Day weekend, people started showing up for this event, you know. And prior to that, the field still had to be mowed. I mean, this is all roots, okay, root stuff. And so Jocko had rented a really cool ride-em lawnmower, and he was going to go ahead and do the thing. And of course, as a 13-year-old, I hopped on the thing, turned the keys, messing around with it, having a blast. And next day, I'm walking on the road, waiting for Jocko to come pick me up, and he screeches his brakes on the truck, and he hollers through the window from the driver's side, "You're fired, kid." I looked at him, I said, "What do you mean? What did I do?" He said, "You left the keys on that tractor, and it won't start. You can't be trusted. You're fired." And so I had nothing to do. He drove away. I had nothing to do but continue to walk towards Pan's Field. 15 minutes later, he pulls back up and goes, "Get in, kid." Always still called me kid. I hopped in, and no word was spoken between us. But I went to work that day, and next day, he didn't pick me up either. Marshall picked me up. That was the first guy with the buckskin coat. His name was Marshall. His girlfriend was Diane. He picks me up, and he's quiet too, particularly quiet. I don't know why. And we get to the field, and there's this tractor, the ride-em tractor, and it's all bent out of shape. I'm like, oh my God, what happened? So it seems that Jocko, the night before, had decided to go up to the Four Corners. He had had a few too many beers, and he decided to take the ride-em tractor. So he drives up to the pizza place at the Four Corners and gets 4 or 5 pies. And as he's driving down, he's doing just great. But he gets to the top of the hill just before it makes a turn by the creek before the gate to the field, and he loses it. Ends up with the tractor pretty much almost on top of him, pizza all over his face in the creek. So I'm there now, Marshall's there, and who shows up but the guy that owns the rental place?
Oh, wow.
"Where's Jocko?" Marshall goes, "I don't know." Of course, I didn't know. But Steve Bishop, Jocko's partner, comes rolling in with his motorcycle and reaches in and pulls out a big wad of cash and says, "How are we going to fix this?" Steve always bailed Jocko out, one way or the other, when it was necessary to do. And so that's how the field, finally, we got a new tractor and it got mowed. And the night before, cars started pulling in, and there must have been 300-400 cars that had pulled in. We parked them at the field, we parked them in neighbors' lawns, every place. Okay, it didn't matter. And the funny thing was, this is the night before, people were showing up, and there's no stage. What are we gonna do? The musicians start showing up, and we had transformed the longhouse of the big chicken ranch into a bunkhouse and other facilities that we had cleaned all the chicken crap out, and made it so that it was functioning as a bunkhouse, as a food venue, this, that, and the other thing. Got the whole thing straightened out. And Jocko looks at me, hands me a lantern, and says, "Go on up to the bunkhouse and bring the people down." Buddy Seif, that ran, everyone knows him from running the Sled Hill Cafe, but he was a carpenter, and he had all the plans to the stage, and everything, all the lumber was there, everything else. Go on up there and talk to the musicians, see if you can get them down to come down with some hammers and nails and what have you. So he always gave me the fun jobs. So I walked in there, and I said, "You've heard of be-ins, you've heard of sweep-ins, you've heard of love-ins. We're gonna have a build-in." And one by one, the musicians followed me down to the stage area. And the first Woodstock Festival, Sound Out, the musicians built their own stage, which is kind of interesting when you come to think about it. The musicians
I think
building
that's
their own
fun.
stage. Yeah. So those are the kind of stories that are in the book. And I mean, I can go on if you want me to, but that was the story of
How many years did it take you to write this book?
15. I mean, it was all up here. All I had to do was take all these stories, figure them out, and get them down chronologically. Hence, I call them waves on the sand, because one story supports the other that chronologically folds into the other, next, and the next, and the next, and the next, throughout my life, as they follow my life, as I mature from a child on up to being a teenager and then into early adulthood.
So that's how it happened. And how long has it been out?
I published it, I first copywrote it back in September 22. And I've refined it, and it's still being refined here and there, you know. But it's basically in its final version. When I did show it to the library, and Michael Hunt read it, he fell in love with it. He said, "It might need a little polishing." I said, "Yeah, you know, but when I find a publisher, no matter how much I polish it, the publisher's going to polish it some more." So it is what it is. And it's out there, and people are loving it. I mean, they're telling me they like it.
Yeah.
I'm getting a great reception, and Woodstock has been so gracious. I mean, all the folks, they love hearing the stories, and they've been open arms. Featuring me at the fair is just the most wonderful compliment that I've ever had. I mean, it's just a wonderful compliment.
You've been here this time, what, a week? 2 weeks?
I showed up on the 17th, 16th. Showed up on the 16th. No, the 13th, excuse me. I got here on the 13th, and I'm leaving on the 25th. So a little over about 2 weeks, almost.
That's wonderful.
I'm spending here, but everyone seems to be accepting me with open arms. I'm just so pleased and thrilled, and I'm sure looking forward to, a lot of folks have already purchased the book, and I'm really looking forward to signing them for everyone, and also they'll be available for sale, both at the fair and the market. So come on down. Love to see you, shake your hand, say hi, get to know you. And to my friends out there that are watching, I can't wait to see you again. And a lot of you, we went to school together, and it sure will be nice to see you.
You know, you also, you have a presence of your own. I mean, you're on YouTube already, and you are.
I do have some things that a little bit, but I publish a lot of my dad's things on YouTube.
That's wonderful.
Yeah, he. We had a lot of. He has a lot of interest about Woodstock itself. I mean, he documented a lot of things about Woodstock. He interviewed Father Francis, Julio Di Diego. I mean, a lot of people from way back when. And I rescued his reel-to-reels and got them all digitized and posted quite a bit of it on YouTube.
That's wonderful. So how do they find you? How do people find you on YouTube?
Just go Eric Greenburg, Alex Osina. If you type in both those names together, you'll come right to our page. And that's the way I find it. I mean, I didn't know how to find myself. But that's how I do it. I go Alex Osina, O-S-I-N-A, Osina, Eric Greenburg, and Greenberg. And you'll go right to our YouTube page, and people are enjoying a lot of the stories, including original soundtrack from Woodstock itself when he recorded it.
You know, it's YouTube is a very fun thing.
Yeah.
Because when you start talking to people about YouTube, everybody thinks that if you go to YouTube, you've got to become a billionaire. Instantly, you have to become. And for me, YouTube has not meant money at all. YouTube is a hobby.
It's
is
fun.
really what it is. Fun. It's
It's
absolutely
educational,
fun.
as far as I'm concerned. I use it for sharing that I want the public at large to know about.
Yeah.
Things that I think that are interesting.
And of course, one of the things that's interesting to me, and you may have not encountered this, was I just knew nothing about YouTube at all. And so I went to YouTube and I Googled Thurman Greco. Well, as it turns out, there is a world-class boxer or wrestler or something
Named
Thurman Greco.
I find that all the time. All the time I'm looking for somebody, and I'm finding another character completely.
Yes.
I'll Google myself and I'll end up with a dentist.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's really interesting. So there on YouTube are all of these, 20 years worth of interviews that a friend of mine in Washington State has been posting, intermixed with Thurman Greco. And I've tried to contact the guy and see if I could interview him, but he doesn't
What's his
respond.
name?
Thurman Greco.
Oh, you want to introduce? Yeah, okay. Because there's a few Woodstockers that are in Seattle right now that I know, and that played major roles in Woodstock while I was growing up. So it's a mecca, that area, the Pacific Northwest. As I said, I've been there since 1990.
What drew you to the Pacific Northwest?
Yeah, very simple, necessity. I was living in Canada at the time. I had taken a job in 1989, took a job for a company called Office Supply Warehouse that was based out of Toronto. And they wanted me to handle their advertising. So I put together an ad department and what have you, and we got the first stores kicked off in Toronto. And then they wanted to expand into Calgary. So they shipped me out to Calgary, and I started doing the same job that I did for them in Toronto. And all of a sudden, one day I get a call, the business went belly up.
Oh.
Totally belly up. The guy didn't follow through on the advertising or the financing that he promised. Lots of things fell through, and I was without a gig, and I was on my own in Canada in the middle of the winter in Calgary. So I took what little money that I actually did have, got on a Greyhound bus with the last of my money, and went to the closest U.S. city that I knew of that sounded cool. So I was 36 years old, and I took the bus to Seattle. And once in Seattle, I took a cab. I said, take me to the cheapest hotel in town. And he did. And I promptly got out Seattle Times and found two jobs. One was with the Seattle Times, working in their art department. And the other job that was available was selling printing at a print shop. And I had injured my back prior to coming to Seattle from Calgary, because I had to find part-time work, and part of it, some of it was working with a moving company, and I got on the wrong side of a Lazy Susan, one of these really heavy convertible beds that I was in a moving truck, and threw my back out completely. So I was hobbling with everything that I could carry, my guitar and this, that, the other thing, strapped around my back, on my shoulder in my backpack, into this hotel. And then I hobbled down after making a couple phone calls to my first job interview. And I wasn't looking my best, I'll tell you that. But I had a good rapport. And the guy at the print shop liked me and gave me $300 cash right then there on the spot. And I continued to do that every single Friday for the next year, which was lovely. I ended up moving into a nicer place and met a woman that, a beautiful woman, beautiful girl, that ended up being my wife, Jody, and began my life in Seattle. And Seattle's beautiful because you can go 5 minutes in one direction, be in the ocean, 10 minutes in the other direction, you're climbing into the foothills. I mean, it's just a gorgeous place, And my favorite part about it was this hotel called the Mayflower Park Hotel. It was my favorite bar because they served the best martinis in town. And I was handling their advertising for them and their printing. That across the street from the hotel was a tree, a big sequoia. It was only it was 60 feet tall, which seems pretty big. And come the next Christmas time, I noticed that it wasn't being lit. So I started making some phone calls, and before I knew it, because I had this homesickness for Woodstock and the tree that we do here on the green. And of course, over the holidays, looking out, not seeing the tree that was a beautiful Christmas ornament as far as I was concerned, not being lit was a shame. And so the city of Seattle embraced me and allowed me as a private citizen to sew it together to light the tree. And for 28 years I was doing that. I did that straight for 28 straight years. The tree got so big that we had to hire then a crane, and I would go up in a man basket with helpers. I'd find helpers from all over the city, some homeless people, some very rich people. Sometimes I put them together and have them go up in the tree and help decorate the tree. And we do that every year until a couple years ago when I moved out of Seattle and moved to South Lake Whatcom by Mount Baker and decided I'm going to turn the project over to someone. And so another company actually picked it up. They don't want their names known. They're doing it very graciously. Every year they're making sure the tree's lit. For the last 2 years they've done it, and they've done a wonderful job. And so that's a tradition.
That's wonderful.
You know, so the Woodstock spirit lives elsewhere as well. People ask me why I do it, you know. You're Jewish. Why would you do a Christmas tree? I said it makes people happy. It's where I'm from. It's about where I'm from. And that has to do with growing up in Woodstock. So that's part of that legacy.
You know, that brings another subject up. Why would you do that? Because you're Jewish. There is so much that we celebrate that is Christmas that's not Christian at all.
Tell me about it. I mean, you got this. It's the season of the holiday of lights. You know, it's all different religions. It's Kwanzaa. There's all different religions that have something going on around that time of year. Yeah.
But it was very interesting. 3 years ago, Christmas Eve was on a Friday, and so this was, and you know, what am I going to do? How am I going to find a guest? So I said, okay, I'll read the I'll read the story of baby Jesus. And I read the story. It was not a story, it was a piece of a story.
Yes.
So I became fascinated with the story, the event, the man, with everything. And I have found so much from researching it, the history, the philosophy, and what people think and what is Christmas to them is fantasy.
You know, if only people could hang on to that spirit all year round.
Yes.
And this, I mean, and this is an important message, folks. You know, it's not just Christmas, okay? I mean, we've got a lot of challenges as a society, okay? I mean, if you watch this tape and you're seeing this tape that we're making right now, 100 years from now, we've survived and we've made it. And pat yourselves on the back, thank your lucky stars that you're healthy, your family is healthy, and what have you. But right now, okay, if you're looking at this 100 years ago, I want you to know that we have 2 seasons. We have winter, soggy, whatever, and then we have smoke season. We're not taking care of our environment very well. But if we went ahead and we stayed in that spirit of Christmas or whatever that holiday season of giving, okay, where all of a sudden making money isn't necessarily the prime thing, you know, but our health is, our happiness is more important, and we put that first and start being caretakers of our land rather than having our land serve us all the time, we might just make it, because I don't see us maintaining this lifestyle for more than another 10, 15 years at best. I mean, we'd need 2 or 3 different Earths to maintain that style.
You talk about 10 to 15 years, I think you're very optimistic, really. I mean, it's just, you know, because once you start on the downhill slide.
I know, it's a slippery slope. So get this message out there, you know, let's stop it with the fossil fuels, stop supporting all that that greed basically, because all they want to do is continue to pump out that oil, and that's warming our planet, and we're all living it right now. And why would we want to do that just to keep other people wealthy when we have the technology? Buckminster Fuller proved it so long ago that we have the technology to change this world inside out for the better, like that, if the powers that be decided to make the switch. And all we have to do is demand it. And it's up to us. But that's another story. You know, I'm not going to try to preach any more than that. You know, but that's something that I'm involved with. You know, I started selling solar. I started getting into lots of stuff after selling print. But yeah, I mean, none of that's in the book, but a lot of the stuff stems from that. That's what this book and growing up in Woodstock evolved into for me in terms of my path. So there's a lot of reasons I'm publishing this book.
So you did solar for a while.
Yeah. You want to buy a solar system?
The first thing we did when we moved here, like 20 years ago, was my husband took a course in solar.
There you go.
And right away, at the time, realized that we were not in our home. We were not in a location to have solar.
You couldn't see your roof through the trees.
Right. And so, I mean, times have changed now, but...
Well, so what they've done, not to interject, but what you can do, and what many people have done, is they have community solar systems, okay, that are located in municipal areas, municipal town areas that have great sunshine, and they built these big ground mount systems, and everyone chips in a little bit from their home, and they get residuals back from the power company.
I think that's wonderful.
And they're called community solar. And look into it. Okay, it's big out west, and I know that it's happening here too.
You know, we go to Great Barrington fairly regularly.
Oh, it's great out there.
And there's a lot of solar in Great Barrington. And it's interesting when we drive, you know, to nearby areas, and there's all this solar. And I keep thinking, gosh, we could have it. We could have it.
Yeah. Yeah, and people would say, hey, you know, the sun only shines so many hours a day, and that's it. Okay? Well, here's the deal. You make enough solar, you can do pumped hydro.
Yes.
So you pump the hydro, whether it be hydro or you could pump sand, for that matter, up to elevation, and then at night you release it and allow it to go down, and as it goes down, it turns turbines through the night, and you have your power 24/7. And the return on energy, in terms of the efficiency of that type of thing, has proven to be over 95%. So you're losing maybe 5% efficiency, you know, and you got electricity 24 hours a day. And when it's cloudy, guess what? The wind's generally blowing, so you can supplement with wind.
Well, and we are doing that now.
Yeah.
We're doing it now on the coast, and of course California has done it for a long time. And there's nothing I love better than to be driving along from Arizona to California or California to Arizona, and you're out there for hours, and there are the windmills.
Yeah.
They're so beautiful.
They're gorgeous. I love it, you know, and I love seeing solar arrays too, because they mean hope. They look like hope to me. That looks like we have a sustainable future. You know, I have a grandchild. I have a grandson. And I want him to have a beautiful life. I want him to have a wonderful life. I don't want him to be dealing with smoke-filled summers and soggy winters every year, you know, and only having it get worse, not better. It's not a new normal. It will never be normal.
No.
It's not going to be normal.
No.
Don't think of it as a new normal, because you'll never get used to it. It's
Well,
get worse.
not only that, it's changing. It's going to be something else. It's not going to be, well, now we have this smoke and this is what we're living with now. No,
Exactly.
that's temporary. This is this downhill slide, you know. And I have a daughter who lives in Phoenix, and they don't have water.
Not only don't they have water, they've been this summer, they haven't had a day below 110 for the last 3 or 4 weeks.
Oh, it's terrible. My daughter had surgery several years ago, and it was in August, and I went out and took care of her. I stayed with her for 6 weeks. I would get up at 4 o'clock in the morning to walk.
Mm-hmm.
And the swimming pools would not open until 9 o'clock at night. That was about 10 years ago.
Yeah.
I don't think. And besides that, if you don't have any water, what are you going to put in the
Not
pools
to mention
anyway?
dust storms, not to mention, I have a friend of mine that has COPD, and by the time she got back from Phoenix after going through a dust storm, she's now on permanent oxygen,
Yeah.
you know? But look, that's all negative stuff, not necessarily, it's good to know, you gotta know about this stuff. But the positive message is we can do something about it. We really have the power to do something about it, but we have to do it now. We don't have time. Because when you put the brakes on a car and you're on ice, it takes a while for that car to stop. So even if we stop completely right now, we're still going to slide forward a bit. And so we don't have the luxury to wait to do this.
That's true. We have reached, the rubber has met the road.
Now you've heard my solar pitch. Anyway, yeah.
Is that what you do now, sell solar?
I used to, and then I got into writing my book.
And now you're writing your book.
Yeah, but I'm still selling solar, aren't I? But anyway, yeah.
Is this the only thing you've written?
No, I've written the second version of this, number 2, I call it Beyond. And it was finished when this was finished, but I didn't want to publish it. I'm holding off on publishing that, but it's kind of like a journey to Ixtland, starting in Woodstock. But I hook up with a guy that I met at the Rainbow Gathering, and we started chasing Kamakahotek through Mexico, and living with the Aztecs, and doing all kinds of stuff for an entire year. And it's all about that story. And then finally making it back home and going into the Grand Union, and a guy looks at me and goes, Eric, I haven't seen you in a few days. That's the way it is in Woodstock. You go to the Grand Union, what you used to, and you find out everything about everything that you want to know. And so I'm up at the Village Green, and another guy looks at me and says, haven't seen you in a couple of days, where you been? I said, did this all happen? I was gone for a whole year. Did this all happen overnight? Like, what's that thing, A Wonderful Life? No, A Christmas Story? Where he goes in, and it all happens in one night.
Yeah.
So did this all happen in one night? No, heck with that. I've been somewhere. And I went down to the Cafe Espresso, ordered myself a beer, and contemplated. But I like my second book almost as much, if not more, than my first one. Yeah.
This took how long?
Well, both books, took about 15 years to put together.
But this, of the 15, how much was this? How many years was this?
Okay, this goes from when I was born, 1953, till when I turned 18 in 72. Okay. Then the second book goes from 72 through 74. And it's just as many pages, just as many words. I put together 160,000 words, which is not bad when you consider someone that was dyslexic, growing up in school, going to school and being left behind because I couldn't read or spell very well. To sew together that many words and actually get it edited where it's readable and people are enjoying it is kind of an accomplishment for me. But I didn't want to intimidate people by coming out with a 160,000 word book, okay, when the average novel is 80,000 words. So instead I broke it into 2 80,000 word books.
Okay, and how long did you spend on that second 80,000 words?
15 years. I mean, I did all of it.
Oh, you did all of it in 15
I wrote
years and divided it into
when I got
2.
finished writing it, I had gotten back to Woodstock, and I was 21.
So what are you writing now?
I'm not.
Really?
Now I'm spending time working on getting people to get my book. And this is my first book release. And
Do you identify as a writer?
I am beginning to, as an author. Yeah. I'm beginning to identify as an author.
That took me a long time. That took me, I worked on my first book for about 10 years.
Did you?
And I went down to Gotham and took the classes at Gotham. And
Gotham? You mean like Batman?
Yeah, the Gotham Writers. It's a writing school
right.
down
See,
there.
that's how much I know. I'm such a beginner.
And, well, no. By the time we finish the first book, we know pretty much. We know more. But it took me a long time to identify
Yeah.
that I really was a writer. That you don't have to, just because you weren't writing your book the first 50 years of your life or whatever.
No, I was telling the stories.
Right. So that was part of being a writer. That was such a hard lesson for me to learn. And when you just spoke about being dyslexic, that's part of it. One of the best writers I met at Gotham couldn't spell anything that had more than 3 letters. And he was fabulous. So who cares if he couldn't spell it? What difference does it make?
They say that some of the best books that have come in, and I can't remember the name of this particular guy, but it was all written on bar napkins.
Yeah.
And whatever, I mean, those are the legends that you hear about, and they inspire other people to write. Maybe I'll get published like that. But who knows? Maybe I'll be able to find an agent and represent me, and because these short stories lend themselves, very Americana. I mean, lend themselves to quite the experience that people do enjoy reading about and listening to. At least they have in my life.
Well, I think it's important. I think one of the things that happens with memoir is memoir shows us how you dealt with what happened to you in life. And you were talking about living the year with the Aztecs and things.
Yeah.
That shows how you dealt with that.
Yeah.
And that's universal. That's very, very important.
And the other thing about memoir, I really do need to point out, and that is, it's not necessarily everything that I write down there is actually factual. I mean, it did happen to me, but that doesn't mean that I was totally understanding everything 100% the right way. This is not a history book, but so you learn something, then you learn you were wrong later.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, we were looking at the prophecies, the Aztec prophecies, and everyone was going, "Oh man, December 12th, 2012, the world was going to end, because that's supposedly the end of the Aztec calendar." Well, when we were doing the math, it was coming out to be in August of '87, which actually turned out to be the harmonic inversions.
Yeah.
And so we were corrected, and I'm not saying that the world ended in 2012 either, because what did happen in 2012 was we got into another phase of the calendar of the Aztecs that opened up a new era.
Well, I think it did open up a new era. What do you think?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's not quite what it was before 2012.
No. And the old Hopi prophecies say that the 7th generation of the white man that came to America, the Americas, would grow their hair long like the Indian again and rebel. And they would call themselves hippies.
And there we are.
It sounds like Hopi. Yeah, and bring about the earth changes, the changes that we need with the earth. Of course, we're not getting any younger, so let's see if we can pull this one off. Yeah, I don't know how we are time-wise, but
We have a few minutes
Good,
left.
good.
We're not getting any younger, but maybe that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe wisdom is all right.
wisdom
It can
is
become
good
a fad.
as long as we share it. As long as we
Yes.
share, just can't keep it to ourselves.
That's why we're doing this.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know?
I'm glad you're saying we, by the way.
Well, we're writers,
Yes, we are. Yes.
and we're writing the stories.
Yes.
And I think that that's extremely
Sweet.
important. And I also think that the history of Woodstock, even though it's Woodstock, it could be, I don't know, the history of Shady, the
Yeah.
history of, I don't know, whatever.
Kuksaki.
Yeah, whatever.
Yeah, why not? I mean, it could have been the Walk Hill Festival, right? I mean,
Yeah.
who knew that they didn't want to have 50,000 people in Walk Hill? Living in their backyards when they canceled the festival under Mike Lang. I
Yeah,
mean, who knew?
yeah.
Well, and that's another story. I mean, I remember Julius and I walking together, and that's in the book, walking up Mead Mountain bushwhacking, and finding that big boulder on the trail where we took our lunch break. Everyone knows that boulder if you walked up to Overlook. And over the side, there was a pool of water, a creek, and the water had pooled. And he takes a pebble out, and he drops it into the creek, and all these ripples come out. And he says, you know the festival that we just did, Sound Festival? This is in '68. And you know that guy with the curly hair that was all smiley and everything that we went into the office and I was talking? He says, his name was Michael. And Michael's going to do a festival that's going to have 50,000 people come to it. I said, no way. And he said, you know what else you won't believe? I said, what? He said, see this water, how fresh it is? One day people are going to put it in a bottle and you're going to buy it. I said, no way. He said, way. Yeah.
Way, it all
Yeah,
happened.
way. And it did happen. And about 4 months later, I'm in the news shop, and who comes in but Bill McCord, the drummer from Fear Itself, who had played at Sound Festival. And he says, Eric, it's happening. I said, what's happening? He said, well, Julius just got a call from Michael Lang, and they're going to have a festival, and it's going to have 50,000 people. Can you believe 50,000 people? That's amazing. And the word got around town. And I went to school, because I was always caught my school bus at the news shop. And by the time I got back, the whole town was abuzz, about this. And throughout the rest of that winter and through the summer, this curly-haired guy, Michael Lang, would walk around. You could see him, and he had this smile on his face, that trademark smile that Michael had. He knew something that nobody else knew, and no matter what it was, it was like a secret. But he couldn't wait to tell you. It was like he just could not wait to tell you what was going to happen. He'd show up at the record shop, and he'd get in there, and he'd blow $1,000, or throughout the summer. He'd pop in there, and he'd spend $100 at a clip, and it would make our day. At the record shop, buying all the new releases of everyone. And lo and behold, he pulled off. He was about to pull off Walk Hill, and who knew that people weren't going to? And so he only had a month to sew Woodstock together over in White Lake. I just spent 3 days ago. I was over in the Bethel Woods at the museum there where they interviewed, and it was a great interview. And we talked about that. We talked about the festival and Richie Havens opening it up and all that stuff, and it's all in the book. So do enjoy.
Everyone is enjoying Woodstock. They come each day.
Woodstock Nation, yeah.
And they come down the sidewalks, and I wonder, how did you get here? Mm-hmm. There are so many people. Where are they staying? Where are they spending the night? Mm-hmm. Where are they eating? I don't know where they're coming from.
Yeah, well, a lot of, traditionally they come up from the city. I usually take full-page ads for the town of Woodstock out in the Village Voice. And it was back in the late 70s. I produced a Victorian house in print that had 5 floors, roof, and each floor had 10 windows across. Each window, unless you bought a double window, was a display ad for a business, or a double display ad, depending on how much you wanted. So the lake always had a double display, and different things, so shops, restaurants, whatever, going down. And we'd put out full-page ads in the Village Voice, and even double-page spreads. And Trailways would also buy the bottom banner. And I asked Trailways, I said, so what's the result of this? He said, well, every time we put this ad out with you, our ridership increases 25%. And it comes up from the Manhattan. And people were starting to show up. Was there a festival? Where's the festival? Where's the new festival? They're thinking, it's just an ad we're putting out, but it was increasing business back then. And it happened to be right at the time Brian Hollander and the folks that decided to put in the new water system and sewer system for the thing. Actually, they put the water system in one summer and the sewer system in the next summer. So we've lost 2 summers worth of tourism almost, with the sidewalks all dug up in 67 and 8, I believe it was. But the tourists still came because of the ads, and we laughed it off. And but that was I love the timing on that. But it had to happen. Had to put the sewer in. Had to put the water system in. those are good things.
What do you think is going to happen to the future of Woodstock?
If I had my way, I'd make $1 billion. I'd buy up every property that there is on Mead Mountain. I'd buy them all, and I'd turn it into another Bird Cliff settlement. And I'd keep just enough for myself. And I'd reintroduce artists to the area. If I had my way. What do I think really will happen? What I think really will happen is all the folks that came up because of the pandemic, that raised all the property rates and everything else that's going on, because the property rates had to go up, the taxes had to go up, because the zoning doesn't allow for more building per se, so the property values go up instead, and the land taxes go up. So what'll happen is all those folks are now being called by the companies that they're working for, they're making all their big bucks, okay? And they're saying, you can't work from home anymore. You have to come back to the office. Well, the office that they were working out of remotely was in Manhattan or wherever. It's not here. They're going to have to leave. And what's going to happen? We're going to have a vacuum. Whether that means property values go down again, I don't know. But look, it's not sustainable. You can't have all these businesses serving the public, without being able to have workers affording to live in the community. If you have a business, you got to hire help, and you can't hire help if they can't afford to live here.
That's very true.
So it's going to find its balance.
That's very true. I have been, oh my goodness, we're down to 4 minutes. Oh, Ellen, this has been so much fun.
But that's what I think is going to happen to the future in Woodstock. I think it's going to balance itself out eventually.
Hope so.
Of course, I'm proven wrong many times.
Well,
I've never seen property values go down ever.
No.
I don't know anyone that has. But who knows? And I'm not saying, folks, that big investment you've made ain't going to pay off. Because if I had my way and I was a billionaire, I'd go ahead and buy your property for double the price.
Anyway,
Yeah.
Well, listen, we're down to a couple minutes. Thank you very much, Miss Ellen. Thank you for coming. Do you have a moment to tell how people can find your book if they don't make it to the library fair?
Library fair tomorrow, the 22nd, the 23rd over at Mowers Market. Be there. I'd love to see you. Other than that, we're going to be we're on Amazon.com. Look up Eric Greenburg, Waves Upon the Sand, Growing Up Woodstock and Beyond. You will find me.
And it's a great story, I can tell. Thank you very much. And thank you so much, Ellen. This was a great show. And thank you, viewers. We had fun this evening. Bye-bye.